Hi, and welcome back to Gatecrashers. This week, I'm joined by Megan Wagner Lloyd and Michelle Mee Nutter, whose book Allergic from Graphix, an imprint of Scholastic, comes out in March. How are you?
Doing great, thank you.
Really wonderful. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to talk to you.
We're very excited to have you here. I got to read the book this week, and we haven't gotten to cover too much young adult type things, but it was just an excellent story. So I'm very thankful that I have you on with me.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
So I just want to let you know I'm kind of a hard-hitting journalist, so I always like to open up my interviews with probably the hardest question you're ever going to get in an interview.
Okay, shoot.
What's your favorite sandwich?
Oh, that's a good one. Definitely BLTs. BLTs are the go-to classic. Very generous on the mayonnaise and sourdough bread. That's my go-to.
I would say anything that someone else makes for me would definitely be my favorite. I like food so much more if I didn't have to prepare it.
You know, that is a very unique answer, but I feel you. The book Allergic is about a girl dealing with her allergies in reference to pets, but it also goes into a lot of different allergies. I was just curious if either of you suffered from any allergies that inspired the story?
So I'm allergic, like Maggie in the book, I'm allergic to animals with fur feathers. I also have a lot of other allergies, but I decided I didn't want to overcomplicate the book. I just wanted to focus on the animal allergies. So that was my inspiration.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a lot of cousins who deal with that type of allergy, so it was really nice to see this story and know that these kind of stories are out there or will be out there when it releases.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like, allergies have been on the rise for a while with kids. People aren't exactly sure why, but there's just so many kids out there with allergies or who have a friend who has allergies. And so I'm really excited for them to be able to see themselves in this story.
And was your own experiences growing up with this type of stuff the inspiration to create this story?
Yeah, that was definitely the inspiration. I mean, the events are not like realistic to my life. It's not a memoir. So it's not that I was taking like the exact experiences, but more like using those as inspiration and trying to capture like some of the experiences and like the feelings that went along with it.
So, as I was saying, this is like a story that you don't really see too often about something that a lot of people, as you said, are dealing with in their day-to-day. For kids dealing with this similar type of situations, what did you both hope to have them take away from this story?
Well, I feel like I'm answering everything, Michelle. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah, of course. I feel like since I personally don't suffer with allergies, to the extent that you do or Maggie does, that in terms of this, my goal was to make it as empathetic as possible a situation and try to get into the shoes of someone who did suffer with allergies. But any of the personal experience you wrote so beautifully, and it was just up to me to kind of draw it out.
Yeah, which you did an amazing job with. It's like I wanted to tell a story with allergies, but I also wanted to be a really fun story, like have the emotions there, but also not like a problem story where it's like they have this problem and everything in their life is really sad. So I wanted to bring in a lot of like fun elements too, because I guess ultimately I wanted to be bigger than just a story about allergies. I wanted it to be about like having an unexpected challenge and ultimately like figuring out how to live with that and figuring out how to kind of choose to be positive and joyful even with this thing that like came out of nowhere in your life.
To follow up on that a little bit, the story does deal with that kind of uncertainty of youth, like growing up and knowing that not everything is set in stone and things change. How did you set out to capture that through the writing and art?
Well, with the writing, I tried to put Maggie in a lot of different situations because I feel like when you're a kid, so much is happening simultaneously and you can't like cover all that in one story, but I kind of tried to put in as much as I could. She has the animal allergies. Her parents are expecting another baby. She has to go to a new school. So I tried to kind of combine challenges from all these different angles to capture, because that is really how it is when you're a kid. And to capture that feeling like, wow, I'm growing up, everything is changing. I don't know how to handle any of this.
You're just so small when you're so young. And when it came time for me to start drawing and start creating the characters and the emotions with all of Maggie's ups and downs, what was really important for me was that all of the things that she goes through and all of the struggles, while to us as adults might not seem so big, but to her, it's her whole world. And so, of course, her emotions are going to reflect that. And her relationships mean the most to her, her friendships and her family member. And when those collide and don't go as planned, it's hard. It's very difficult. And Maggie is such a real character to me and hopefully to so many other readers where they can identify with that.
Yeah, definitely. It was really important to me to really respect like a child's emotional life. And like at first I was kind of hung up on like, okay, allergies are not the end of the world, especially I have never experienced like life-threatening allergies, which is like an even much bigger challenge. And so kind of held me back like, oh, like there's so many worse problems. But ultimately I was like, well, even though that's true, like when I was a kid, some of these things did feel like the end of the world to me, or like the worst thing, just like not being able to get a pet when like all these other kids do. It felt so huge. And I really tried to respect that in the story, that it doesn't matter that there's like bigger problems and there's adult problems. Like to this kid, this character, like that is their world and it's being disrupted.
With situations like that in the story, I think the art does do a lot of telling of what she's going through in a much bigger way than we would see it as an adult. Was there anything that you wanted to capture specifically, Michelle, when you were drawing certain situations in the story?
Yes. I really wanted to capture the feeling of Maggie's body language in all the panels. I tried really hard to show you how she's feeling, even if she doesn't say it, because a lot of times kids don't express themselves and don't talk about their feelings. And I like how Maggie explores and understands that a big part of the miscommunication that she has is because she's not speaking up and speaking her heart. And when it came to creating the family, it was really fun to have the dynamic of sibling relationships and the kind of fun sibling rivalries that you have. And so that dynamic was really important, just the everyday life, and also in some panels playing with scale, where Maggie is shrinking down, growing smaller, or in a sea of children at school. I really wanted to have that impact of a child kind of, you feel so small and you feel like you're alone, surrounded by so many people, and you can't really connect.
Yeah, and I think that was very true throughout the story, especially with Maggie having a pretty large family. Was there any inspiration behind that, Megan, to have her not just kind of an only child or something along those lines?
Well, I've always kept in mind like that bringing in like sibling dynamics to my stories, because I grew up in a big family, and I feel like so much of who you are is like bouncing off of your siblings, and there's like all these strong personalities in the mix. Maggie's family is very different than mine was, but I tried to draw on some, like create something new, but draw on like feelings I had as a kid. Like I was the third kid in my family, and for a while I was the youngest before my next sibling was born. And I would often feel like isolated from my older two siblings because they fought a lot. And I got along with both of them, but they would be like busy fighting with each other. And so, but I felt like, oh, that's pretty unpleasant for what's supposed to be a pretty fun book, like to have the siblings fighting all the time. So I was like, how about I make them twins who are just like best buds. So she's left out because they're like getting along so much. So yeah, I tried to kind of go from my childhood, but bring in these totally new characters, but with like the true feelings behind that. And also Maggie's mom is having a baby, and I had when I was a little bit older, I was younger than Maggie, but there was like a pretty big gap between me and my next younger sister. So bringing in some of the emotions with that.
So as I mentioned before the show, this is like our first interview with someone who is writing for a much younger audience than we're used to. So I was curious, when you're writing a story like this, how do you choose your words and vernacular to be more accessible to young readers?
Yeah, I never think about that. Yeah, I just never think about that. I just write it as it comes to me. I mean, I'm sure I must somewhere be in like a mindset where I'm not just like, just making it totally out there. But yeah, I don't think about that. And then if there is an issue, then it kind of comes up with editing. But I do really try to connect back into a more like space of being that age. So maybe that's why I'm not like thinking about the specifics, because I'm really trying to reflect that age in kind of a larger way.
So with the aiming at the younger audiences, Michelle, how did you, what's important to you in your art to capture young readers and to draw them in?
I guess right off the bat, I really want to just create characters that people can identify with. And for Allergic specifically, it was my first graphic novel. And I was really excited because I grew up reading Calvin and Hobbes and then some Marvel comics as I got older, and Vera Brosgol, like all of these amazing comic artists. And as I was reading them, I realized that my family does not look like the families in a lot of those books. And I grew up in a mixed family, so it was really important to me to have my first graphic novel represent that. Maggie comes from a mixed race family, and I was really, really excited to put that out into the world for another child who was growing up in a family that didn't necessarily look like a mirrored reflection of them, and creating characters that have real expressions and feelings and can show that in body language and color. That's another huge thing, that I try to make everything vibrant, but at the same time, a more sophisticated palette. I don't tend to go with I would say like the primary bright saturated, but I like to pump up some of my favorite colors and things like that.
So I've got two follow-ups on that, because you actually touched on a question I was going to talk about later, which is representation in the story, which there's so much of, which is so important. And you touched on that, like, you want people to see like the world as it is. Like, you don't want them to just see the things they see every day. So how did you try to put that front and center in the story?
I guess it's just always front and center in my mind whenever I create characters. I'm Korean and I'm adopted, and my mom is Italian and my father is Irish, and my brother is also adopted from Korea as well, but he's not my blood brother. And we grew up around, I would say, a majority white town. It was very different from my brother and and I remember constantly looking elsewhere to try and find people who looked like us, or just diversity at all. And it was really hard to find. So when I started drawing, I really wanted to make sure that I represented the world that I wanted and the world that I saw. And even if it was outside of my small Plymouth window, if you will. But I think it's just always in the back of my mind. And it's a lot of fun to create characters that are from so many different backgrounds and kind of plant little seeds of info of where they might have grown up.
That's so important. So really, thank you for that. With this being telling a story together, how did you guys? How did you sort of work together on the book? Couldn't figure out a word.
Words are hard. It's been a day.
Really are.
It's been a year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wrote like half the script first, and at that point is when Michelle read it and created like some initial sketches of the characters. They did change a bit, but quite a bit. But then I kind of had her general vision in mind as I wrote the rest of the script. But I come from the world of picture books initially. I've written several picture books, and in picture book writing, then you really don't like tell the artist what to draw, like at all. You write the words and then the artist will do their thing with them. It's like very frowned upon. And I mean, I agree with it. I want the artist to like bring their vision to the story. So I came into it with that. And so even though I'm describing like the action in the panels, I was never really saying like, this is what their expression looks like, or this is the color of their hair, or like anything like that. So that was really kind of Michelle's territory to explore and kind of let her creative vision shine.
It was a lot of fun. I kind of jumped into the world of professional illustration kind of with a bang, and anything before that was smaller commissions, and so it would be like portraits, or someone would ask me to draw their character, and so they would tell me what that character looked like. And so this was kind of the first time where I had complete free reign outside of, my personal work, where of course I have creative license to do whatever I'd like. But for this, it was amazing. And I appreciated that Megan was so willing to let me take the reins on it. It was a lot of fun to push and pull with it.
That is, I did not know it was the first. So, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is both of ours first graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
This, as someone who has read probably too many graphic novels, this is a coming hot out the gates. It was a really special book.
So thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm so impressed. With this being your first outing as a artist on a book like this, what inspired your color palette? Like, what did you want to bring to the table with that? I know you said you didn't want to make it like a super vibrant. So what inspired it?
I guess just my favorite color palettes. I kind of fell back on my comfort zone, and I just kind of like warm jewel tones, and I love yellow and ochre. That's one of my favorite colors, so you'll see that in the book a lot. But I think having pops of color to help bring your eye around the panel as well. In terms of like when I'm thinking of color for a piece, it is kind of hard for me to visualize it because I don't know if you know about this, but there's a thing called aphantasia, and it is where your mind cannot visualize things in your mind's eye. Like if someone says, close your eyes and picture yourself on a beach, and then there's an elephant running through. My brain doesn't see those images. I can understand what a beach is and what an elephant is, but I can't place them together on the scene unless I've seen that image before, or it's from my own personal memory bank. So when I'm working with color at the end, it's a lot of testing. It's a lot of throwing color down, seeing what works, and just being very intuitive.
Wow. That's so impressive what both of you have done here. You keep knocking me out of my chair. Like I can't, as someone who is like,
well, we aim to surprise.
I know. As someone who is like a big advocate for the comic book as a reading format for young readers and a really good way to inspire kids to want to read, what do you think the strengths are in that format rather than just a prose novel?
I mean, I think that most kids today are very visual because the world has become so much more visual with the internet. And so they connect with that pretty easily, I think, and it draws them in. And then they're having this combination of the visual and the written word. And so I think it just, not all kids, but just like probably the majority of kids today can really connect with that visual format really well.
And I agree 100%. And when I was younger and I was reading picture books, I was a weird kid, and I always wanted to know the moments that happened before and the moments that happened after all of the illustrated pages, because there are so many in-between moments, and I loved cartoons and animation. So I found that comics really married the two for me. It was really fun to see the beats as the panels go on, and there's something so exciting about following along a story and then having a cliffhanger left on the last panel on the right page, and then you turn it over and then there's this huge reveal. And there's something so satisfying about that experience because you control the anticipation. You sit in the moments with the characters, and I think it's a more immersive way to read. I really, really love the format.
Yeah, I love the page turns too. And I always try to keep that in mind when I'm like writing and like, I think that's a thing from picture books too, that I learned is like to like always value that page turn moment.
The golden stuff.
Yeah.
And I know Michelle mentioned reading comics growing up. Megan, did you have any relationship with comics before coming to something like this?
So growing up, I had never I don't think I'd ever been to like a comic book store or even like seen like comics, like traditional comics. And even if I heard about them, I don't think I thought it was something like girls could read or be involved in. So the comics that I was exposed to were Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side. We always had like compilations of those at my house, and I loved those. But yeah, then as the, graphic novels started exploding in the children's scene, then I started reading, more and more of those and just falling more and more in love with it. That's
really good to hear. That's especially because now you're here and you are that person that's going to inspire young readers who don't think they can do it. So thank you for that. So we do like to end our interviews on another pretty tough question. If you had a Rube Goldberg machine, what would it do?
So maybe I just have a theme going with the sandwich thing, but I would probably have something that like completed some kind of boring life tasks for me, so I had more time for writing. So maybe did chores or maybe some food, something like that.
I think my machine would be some type of arm apparatus where I'm lying in bed and I'm reading a book and I don't have to hold the book and it'll turn the pages for me because I get really tired.
I feel that too. I can never find like the best position to read. I've been searching far and wide.
Yeah, that's why I love paperbacks. It's like less taxing.
They're perfect.
So, before I let you go, where can people find you online so they can follow your work?
So my website is meganwagnerlloyd.com, and then the only social media I'm on pretty regularly is Instagram, and I'm just at Megan Wagner Lloyd.
And my Instagram handle is Buttersketch. It's both a pun on my last name, Nutter Butters, and also butterscotch, the candy.
Well, I'm very excited for other people to get to read this story. And thank you for coming on. Allergic will be out in March.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Well, you can find us at GateCrashersPod on Twitter and Instagram. I always say that like I'm asking a question. So you can catch us next week.
Scholastic Graphix.